Well, good morning. Welcome to the Global Church Podcast. I just returned yesterday from a trip to Saskatchewan, and so I wanted to give a little bit of a recap about that. And Jim met last week with our Primetimers group, and so we wanted to also give a little bit of just background about that, and so just some of the things that are going on here. So,
yeah, and then you're also going to be taking off tomorrow, so we also wanted to kind of close out our session today with where you'll be heading tomorrow for your next upcoming trip. Yeah, last week I had just a great opportunity to spend time with the Primetimers ministry here at FBC, and they, for a number of years, they have been given to an orphanage work through Harvesters. And so the leadership of the Primetimers ministry, they came to Scott and I probably 6 weeks or so ago, maybe 8 weeks, and they just wanted to give to something that would be more specific to a location where FBC is working. And they could be more directly involved, more personally involved, more intimately involved with the gifts and the offerings that they're able to give to a specific location. So as we talked about it, we identified Gopal Manali in Nepal, who would be a good location for them to consider giving their offerings to and their resources to specifically. So Gopal has a school for untouchable children, and he has 91 kids at the school there. And these are kids that don't have the resources to go to any other school. They've been, and since outcasts, they've been overlooked by much of society in the area there where Gopal lives and where he works. My back up just for a quick minute. Gopal used to be work at a government school, and he had a really well-paying job and a good situation at a government school. And a number of years ago, he resigned from that job to be able to go into full-time ministry in terms of helping to train and establish leaders in his area and in the surrounding area where he lives, focusing on his church and other churches around. And then he started this school there for the untouchable lower class in Nepal and in that specific area. So as we shared that with the leadership of the Primetimers, they really were just touched by the opportunity to be able to give directly to a work where FBC is specifically involved. And we've taken trips there before. We've seen this school. Actually, there's a video on our FBC missions website that you're welcome to go check out. It's Gopal Manali, Nepal is the title of it, in the media page of the church website. You get some more information about it then. So last week I was able to just spend some time with the Primetimers, a great ministry here of the church, and just share about the way that God's working in that area and with Nepal. Communicate to them what God's doing in and through the school with reaching these 91 students or 91 kids that are at the school there. And some of them have sponsorship and some of them do not have sponsorship. And so it was just a great time to just spend with the Primetimers who are hungry and open and wanting to be involved in a ministry like that with Gopal in the school. So it was a great time.
And then just from the standpoint of a missions program, it's just, I mean, obviously the Primetimers, they could have chosen to find their own project to give to, and there's a whole host of mission organizations out there, many of which are doing very good works. And but we just really appreciated the fact that they came to us and wanted to be involved with a work that we're already working with.
Right.
Yeah. And obviously we're working in 17 different countries, and some of these works are very big works and include a lot of churches and a lot of people. Some of them are small, one church, two churches. Others include, like Gopal, a school and many locations where they're teaching, and so obviously there's more genuine needs that come up in the lives of the people that we're working with in their ministries than our missions budget can afford. And so it's awesome when people, groups at FBC who want to give and beyond their normal giving to missions in some way or another come and want to partner with us and participate in places where we're already working, because there are a lot of needs that exist out there.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So you got back just on Monday,
right,
from your trip up to Saskatchewan,
right?
And so why don't you share a little bit about that trip and some of the information and what the Lord did through that trip?
Yeah. So back in, what was it, September, you and I first went up to Ethnos, Canada. We had heard that Ethnos, Canada, they were making just First Nations people in ministry and outreach a major part of their training there, and actually training missionaries for that work in Canada. And so we just wanted to go up and see it firsthand and talk with them about it. And this, as we believe God is leading us to place a team to start a new work among Native Americans here in the U.S. And while we were there, they told us about Dave Wright, who is a New Tribes or Ethnos Canada missionary. He had been a missionary in Papua New Guinea for many years, worked among the Mangan tribe, planted a church, and had come home, I believe it was for a furlough, and he connected with an older Cree Indian elder named Norman, and Dave began to lay out for Norman just about the chronological teaching and the foundational teaching and how it establishes people in the faith and how it establishes churches and really clears up a lot of confusion about things. And so Norm got really excited about that and began to talk to Dave about not going back to Papua New Guinea, but to actually stay and help him pass this teaching on to many of the churches up north. And just, I don't know all the details and how God worked it out, but God did that. He laid that on Dave's heart. And so I think it was in 2016 was when they decided to stay and partner with Norm and begin that process. And so, being that Norm is a Cree Indian, he has relationships from this area up in the north that Dave didn't have, and so he began to reach out to missionaries and churches, pastors up in that area. There's some white Anglo churches. There's Cree believers. There's Dene believers who they're related to the Navajo, and then there's a bunch of Métis believers who are they're half French and half Indian. And so he began to reach out to them, and they're different denominations. Some are very charismatic, and some not so much, and approach them about them coming together for the purpose of receiving this training, receiving this teaching. And many of them bought in, and so they've been doing that now. It's going on 3 years. And so Mike and I flew out on Wednesday. They had planned this past weekend was one of their, every 2 weeks they travel up north and kind of do this circuit and meet with these pastors and other church leaders, missionaries. and this was one of their, the next weekend to do that. And so we went out to be a part of it and just see it and see what's going on and see if we, what we could learn from it. And it was very interesting. Dave's if anybody has the gift of teaching, he does. It was amazing just seeing the way that he has redeveloped, repackaged the chronological teaching. Very detailed, very, very well laid out. He's got teacher's manuals, instructions, all kinds of visuals. Some of them he's actually teaching the lessons to, and then other ones he's actually teaching them how to teaching them how to use the lessons. So he had different groups, and his focus was a little different in each of those groups, and very detailed. Just doing a really good job of establishing people. And so he's got, he had some charismatic missionaries that were coming to this training that were buying in, and that had never seen truth laid out this way foundationally like this. And it's actually clearing up some wrong beliefs that they had, in false teaching and stuff. And so it was really interesting to see, and just the component that Norm added, just the relationship wise. I mean, it was, had he not been involved, I don't know that Dave, as a white guy, would have been able to go up there and start these relationships like they have now. And our trip started in Saskatoon. We flew into Saskatoon. And that's where Dave picked us up, and then the next day we spent most of the time with the church there in Osler that they're a part of. It's there's over 400 people in the church. Sounded like it's one of the largest in the community there. I think it was traditionally Mennonite, but the leadership of the church have totally bought into seeing the need to use Dave's curriculum as their main mode for discipling the church.
Like the whole church has.
The whole church.
The leadership has.
Yeah. And the leadership there, they have had Dave train them. They've gone through Dave's training, and now they are training other leaders in the church to continue passing it on and using it in the church. And so it was... that was something we didn't expect. We were expecting to just go and visit with the First Nations people and to go and see pretty much an Anglo church right there in the city that has totally bought into using it was really good. It was encouraging, and we met with the pastor and some of the leaders and just getting feedback from them. Okay, so you guys have been in existence for all these years teaching kind of the traditional way that churches teach. A lot of topical and, maybe this book and then this book and then this book. And so now you're teaching more foundationally. What has been what are you seeing? Are you seeing, people becoming established in the faith? And they had a lot of testimonies of how it's affecting lives and people becoming clearer in truth and seeing the big picture of, this eternal plan of redemption that God created before the foundations of the earth. And that unless you teach it as one continuum, you don't see that big picture, and you don't see, all these individual doctrines and biblical instruction and, all the other specific truths that we often focus on in books, how it fits into the big picture of, God carrying out that plan. And so it was really good to hear.
Yeah. So then after visiting with that church of say 400 or so people,
yep.
What was next?
Yeah, then the next day, Wednesday when we got there, he had a meeting in that church with some of those people, and then it was Thursday the next day we met with them, and then Friday we headed up north.
Okay.
And went to 3 different locations up north. I can't remember the area of the first one. It was just this resort they called it a resort, but it was more like a camping, hunting camp out in the middle of nowhere.
Were people hunting?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
No, but it felt
a pretty
like
good
it.
area for hunting.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But that's kind of was the layout of the cabins and stuff.
Okay.
And then from there we went up to Buffalo Narrows, which was a community of about 1,500 people, way up north.
So it was cold, snowy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was actually a warm week, and it was hovering around 23 degrees. So yeah,
Okay.
The week before it was quite cold. They were saying snow and all that. And then so we were there Saturday and met with a group. And then the next day, Sunday, we drove across to what's called Pine House Lake, and it was a Métis community, and attended this church, church of Métis people, pastored by a pastor from Trinidad and Tobago, and so it was interesting. And then that afternoon, Dave had a training session in that church, and so we left about 7 that night to head back to Saskatoon, and so it was.
So you already told me earlier, but tell our listeners about your trip back.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be 5-6 hours, something like that. It ended up being 8. We came out, everything was icy and slippery, and we arrived back at the hotel in Saskatoon at 3 a.m. and had a 6 a.m. flight. So we had about an hour to shower and repack.
That was Monday.
Then head to the airport. Yeah.
What time did you get back to town here?
Landed at like 4:30 p.m. We had a 5-hour layover in Toronto. So then arrived back about 4:30. Got home somewhere around 6:30.
Yeah.
So Monday was a long day.
Yeah, a long day.
Yeah.
Remind us again, real briefly, for our listeners that might not know why we took this trip up there, in terms of the way that we believe God leading FBC in terms of Native American ministries.
Yeah, just through the years of going out to work with the Navajo work, we've done the same thing with them that we do in all the other 17 countries where we work. And in all those places, we're able to partner with the pastors and the church leaders and equip them, and then they grow and become established and are able to equip their churches and equip other leaders and begin equipping other pastors. And for whatever reason, that's just never taken off like that among the Navajo. The one main pastor, Alden, that we've worked with for many, many years, he's done a great job of sticking to the teaching and teaching through the lessons. And, but they're way out in the middle of nowhere, and his church is made up of mainly family members, people from his clan. They're all older. They just really haven't been in a place to affect, influence anyone else.
Right.
And as we have come into contact with other churches, as we've contacted other groups, other organizations like Indian Bible College, who has a much broader perspective of Native Americans in general, we began to realize just the tremendous need that exists. And you remember the president of IBC told us that among 573 groups, Native American nations, there isn't one that they know of that has a biblically sound, reproducing, functioning, discipling church among any of them.
Right.
There's many churches, denominational churches, and but very, very confused in the faith, and so we believe God's leading us to form a team from a trained, discipled team from FBC and begin a new work among Native Americans somewhere.
Yeah, and in the past year, there's been 6 trips, one way or the other, because we went there with Jordan about a year ago now, just over a year ago. And then in January this year, we were out there with Joel and Rachel, who now God is leading to Thailand. And then we were out there in the spring where we visited Indian Bible College. And then you and I went to Durham to Ethnos 360 headquarters,
Right.
talking about them with First Nations. We brought Daniel and Corrine here for our Global Church Week, and then now you've taken this trip. So, God's really, in the past year, really focused us in terms of moving forward with getting more involved with Native American ministries, not only thinking about it, but then also energies and resources and trips and personnel to move forward and see how it is that he wants to lead us and direct us. So that was really the purpose of your trip there, was to really just gain more information, what's taking place, and just kind of just gathering more data, gathering more information as God moves us forward to, in his timing, to send our own team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was expecting, I was expecting to go out and see, like a First Nations church, that the way that the guys at Ethnos Canada made it sound. And it wasn't so much like that. There were First Nations people mixed in. Each place we were at, it was a mixed group. There were Anglos and Métis and some First Nations people. So I didn't get to see that. It's still new. It's only been, it's going on 3 years, and so it's still very much in the beginning, establishing stages. But I did grab a testimony that Dave had given us while we were there that I wanted to play.
Sure.
I thought might be really good to hear.
So the thing that's been so amazing in this journey is the varied people that have been affected by it, like cross-denominational boundaries. Like, so even here in the Buffalo Narrows teaching, like sitting at the same table as charismatics and more Calvinistic, all sitting at the same table. You've got Cree, you've got Dene, you've got Métis, you've got whites, all sitting at the same table, and Africans there yesterday. And the thing that's been incredible is how God has brought them along through the truth of his word, everybody engaging with the truth at their own level, and impacting. And it's like Tony said, like, we've been teaching, I don't know how many times we've come up here now, every 2 weeks, all winter, like the first winter, like everybody stayed. Like, it was just crazy. And then the next year, like, there's more. And then the multiplication component of now seeing who our leaders were and then training them, and they're reteaching, and everybody's busy. And so they're coming because they're hungry and they want to be fed. But even on the other end of the spectrum is the Independent Baptist, King James only. And fascinating how God has opened that door for them as well. And some of their pastors came to a first training event, and 4 days in, the pastor just came, eyes as big as saucers. He says, "Dave, this just changes everything." He says, "We didn't preach God in relationship. We preached against sin." And so now they've discovered grace. And so it's just transforming this little body of believers that have split and split and split and split all over the place. But now they're discovering grace and honoring and relationship and understanding people and not beating people over the head, and just fascinating. And so this is a testimony from a pastor, and he's allowed us to quote him. He said, "Just a note to let you know how I've seen established impact my life and those around me. I greatly value where the teaching begins in Genesis 1:1. From there, a very strong foundation is laid in Genesis through the rest of the Bible. The course is very strong in biblical exposition, where Bible doctrines are very plainly and powerfully dealt with. The highlight of the course for me personally so far is the exalted position given to God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I have a greater understanding of the person of God and his gracious work among men than I have ever had in my life. I have been a Bible-believing Christian for over 63 years and a pastor for the last 35.
Yeah. And so that's, so this is a community that, like you said, you had a King James only, very legalistic church. You have very charismatic churches. You have, First Nations people that are mixing in, a lot of syncretism of their old beliefs with Christianity, and how this foundational chronological teaching can go in with all those different people sitting at the same table and begin to get them all on the same page, unifying them in the faith.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're seeing is needed among the Native American people in the U.S.
Yeah.
And that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you're able to see some of that there.
Yep.
In varying degrees.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Good. So tomorrow,
Yep.
you and Annette are leaving probably early.
8 a.m. flight.
Yep. So 8 a.m. flight means get there at 5:30, which means leave the house at 4. So early. Yeah.
Right.
So you're heading to Guadalajara, Mexico. Share with us a little bit about what that trip's going to entail.
Yeah, every year the Guadalajara Church has they call it a family conference or family retreat, and they usually ask one of us from here to go. John Morrison's gone in the past. Dennis McNutt's gone in the past. You've gone a couple times. I've gone a couple times. They've had Wilson Campoverde. They've had my dad, and so they asked Annette and I to come. I had shared with Victor a number of months ago about our trip to Kenya, and just teaching through Revelation there in Webuye, and how God used that in our lives, and had been since before 2000, year 2000 was the last time I taught through Revelation with our Karen believers back in Thailand, and after 18 or 19 years of growing in the knowledge of God and growing in grace, just I see the book in a totally new light.
Yeah.
And I was just sharing some of that with him, and he got excited about it and asked if we would be willing to come and teach it there at their family conference. And so
most of their church comes out to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they come as families. Yeah. It's a really, really neat thing. It's very encouraging, very encouraging to be there and to just see their unity and oneness and love and care for one another. And so, that's what we're
That's great.
what we're doing.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, certainly all our listeners can be praying for you and Annette as you guys take off early in the morning, and you'll be back on Monday.
Get back Monday.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so we can get back together in here, and we can do another podcast and meet with our listeners again and hear an update from your trip. And I was thinking, haven't mentioned this to you yet, but off the top of my head, maybe we can have Joel and Rachel come join us sometime soon.
Yeah.
To get an update about them.
Yeah.
Heading up to Thailand.
That'd be great.
And talk about that a little bit with them. And then also last week you mentioned, just as a reminder to everybody, that we have a missiology class coming up. We renamed it. Do you remember what we renamed it? I don't remember what we renamed it to.
I'm still jet lagging.
Yeah. So December the 1st is when it starts. 10:45 missiology class. I think looking at missions from God's perspective, something along those lines.
Right.
Check the website and check whatever information platform you like to use about that upcoming class. But we'd love to have you join us.
It'll be an 11 to 12 week class. Something like that.
11 to 12 week class. We'd love to have you join us starting on December the 1st. So God's perspective on global missions. There you have it. Thanks.
That's it.
All right. Yeah. We came out with it, but then can't remember it.
Right.
So. All right. Well, anything else to share?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for joining us, and
Thank you.
we'll see you next week.